We're back with another ACC Power Rankings following Week 12 of the college football season. We're down to the final stretch here before the ACC Championship. So we're going to break it down. And this week, there were some interesting results. Virginia finally getting not just a close, pulled it out, little lucky win. No, they were dominant against Duke in maybe their best game of the year. Clemson, road win. Ranked win for the first time since 2023 when they beat Notre Dame. So over 2 years since then. So big win for Clemson, as ugly as it was. Wake Forest and Florida State earn wins. Let's dive right in to this week's action. All right. So we'll start with the bottom of the conference. Syracuse was off this week. A much needed rest for them. They're back in action next week. They go to Notre Dame. Probably not going to be good. Boston College is now 1-10, 0-7 in conference play after losing to Georgia Tech. But they had over 500 yards and 34 points. Yes, the defense is bad. We'll show you in a second how they've been unlucky. We'll save most of this conversation for Georgia Tech. But Boston College actually quite competitive. I could see them moving up. We'll see. We'll see. But not their worst performance. Stanford had off. They have the big game coming against Cal. So JKS, Jacob De Jesus are coming. That's going to be a tough one. I think Stanford's pretty bad. Virginia Tech, pretty much blown out by Florida State. But if you're Virginia Tech, it doesn't really matter. You're 3-7 now. You are probably not making a bowl regardless. What's important is there is chatter that James Franklin is in talks, maybe contract negotiations. I think it's going to happen. James Franklin to Virginia Tech. I'm not really announcing it here first, but I said that pretty much immediately upon Virginia Tech having an opening and Penn State letting Franklin go. When those two things both happen, I said, man, that is not that far of a trek to go to Blacksburg. That makes perfect sense. If Franklin can just get Virginia Tech 80% to where Penn State was or has been under Franklin, I think Virginia Tech fans will be pleased. And I think Virginia Tech, they've kind of held back their coaches by not giving them the investment they need. Seems like that's changing. Franklin's going to go there, really get people aligned, all rowing in the same direction. I could see a consistent 9-win program there. And in the ACC, that means contending for the ACC championship. I think things could be really good if they make that move. And then North Carolina, another team below 500. They lost on the road at Wake Forest, settled for 6 field goal attempts. At some point, you got to punch it in the end zone. They did not. So they lose to Wake Forest. And then we get into the teams that are above 500. We start with NC State, up and down, up and down. I don't know how this team beat Virginia earlier in the year. Really confusing team. I don't know how they beat Georgia Tech 2 weeks ago. But here they lose 41-7 to Miami. CJ Bailey, their quarterback, had 120 yards and 2 interceptions. I've continued to say I don't really believe in him. They're 5-5. Probably end up going 6-6. They'll probably end up keeping Dave Doran because this is a bad time to make a move, and it seems like they're putting all their money in the Will Wade basketball program, which they probably should because they're going to be awesome. So they might be the most boring team in this conference right now. They're not bad. They're not making changes. Like Virginia Tech's bad, but you're excited about the changes. NC State's just kind of there. Maybe make a bowl. Above them are a few more 500 teams. Florida State. Hey, Florida State's 5-5. It feels like they're 0-10, but remember, last year they went 2-10. They're making improvements. So they go to Virginia Tech. They win by 20 points. They hold Kyron Drones to only 125 yards passing. That's all pretty good. And coming from that home win against Alabama where you thought, oh my gosh, they went from winning the conference to 2-10 to right back to winning the conference. No. Okay, it's going to be steadier climb to get back. But still, I think they could go beat NC State on the road. I think they have a shot. I don't know if I'll pick them, but I think they have a shot against Florida. If they could finish 6-7 wins, that's some progress. It'll save you a $60 million buyout. You don't want to fire Norvell this offseason, have so much money behind. You're going to be so in trouble financially. I don't know if you'll be able to support the next guy. The next year's schedule with Notre Dame, Alabama, Clemson, Miami. I mean, it's a brutal schedule. I think you do one more year. If Norvell could somehow do a turnaround with that schedule, that's great for you. If not, at least you get kind of a clean break where it's not this overwhelming financial burden, not this incredibly tough schedule upcoming. If you're Florida State, you really want to win at least one more. Hold off on firing Norvell. All right, let's talk Clemson. Clemson goes on the road and actually gets lucky for once. Things actually go their way. Not all bad breaks. And Clemson wins against a ranked team. It's the first time since that Notre Dame game in November of 2023. Big win for them. Big in the sense that emotionally big, shows that things are trending. Changes still need to be made, but it's not as bad as it has looked, somewhere in between. So that's good news. Clemson couldn't get out of their own way. Just run the ball. Just hand the ball to Adam Randall. Clemson struggled with the inside zone for like several years. The offensive line hasn't been that great. The running backs post ETN haven't always been that great. And this time it was working every time. Randall would get 4, 5, 6, 10, 15 yards. Just give it to Adam Randall. It was working great. And every big play, every third down, every goal line, they got cute or they got creative. The third down where they do a tunnel screen behind the line of scrimmage, what are you doing? The third and goal where they bring in Peter Woods instead of giving it to Adam Randall, or Keith Adams, whose whole purpose is that he's a short yardage back that they won't use, and instead they use a defensive tackle, which I think is insulting and crazy and a bad use of Peter Woods too. Causes a fumble. They go back to it again. This time I don't think they meant to hand it off to Peter Woods. I think it confused Klubnik, but maybe he's confused because you're running ridiculous plays. Next time they go to the goal line, they just hand it to Randall, and it's a touchdown. Just do that. At one point, I was screaming, inside zone, inside zone, inside zone. And they actually did an inside zone, and Randall just ran it for a 25-yard touchdown. Like sometimes it's just the guy sitting on the couch watching the game is right because he's not trying to be cute. And the guy trying to outsmart everyone on the sideline is just being crazy. And this was one of those games. I really didn't like the play calling. Clemson only had 20 points in the game. A lot of unblocked blitzers just going right at Klubnik. I would love if anyone knows, if anyone could give an informed opinion, why was that happening? Was the offensive line missing guys? Was someone else missing guys? Was Klubnik not calling out the right blitz protections? Because it was brutal several times. In a game where the offensive line generally wasn't bad, I mean, they were road grading open holes for Adam Randall. So why are these blitzers just zipping in completely untouched? I don't know the answer to that. Let me know if you do. But as bad as Clemson was at points, Louisville just even more self-inflicted errors. They had 10 penalties, absolutely crushing for them, 10 penalties, 84 penalty yards, 3, I think it was actually 4, but 1 was offsetting, but a bunch of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, completely unacceptable. It's a real culture issue that doesn't get corrected mid-game or mid-season. That's like Jeff Brom has got to fix that. And then at the end of the game, Cooper Ranvier, their kicker, he entered the game 15 for 17 and 30 for 30. So 15 for 17 on field goals, perfect on extra points. He missed an extra point. He missed a field goal. He was 2 for 3. I still think he's a good kicker. They go for the game-winning kick, and Jeff Brom yanks him, brings in some other kicker, and that kicker yanks the kick and misses it. And they lose 20-19 because they missed 2 field goals and an extra point. And because of all these unsportsmanlike penalties, they probably wouldn't have needed to attempt so many field goals. It would have just got some touchdowns and beat Clemson. But that's something the Brahms got to fix. I was singing his praises a couple weeks ago, and they beat Miami. He had the most ACC wins of the past, whatever it was, 3 years, however long he's been there. Or most wins total, not ACC wins, more than Dabo Swinney, more than Mario Cristobal. It was Jeff Brom. I think he's probably been passed by now. But like, you can get up and go back all the way to Purdue and score 49 or whatever it was on Purdue. You can beat Clemson last year when Clemson was okay, like they weren't bad. Clemson won the ACC. You beat them somehow in Clemson in a blowout. You beat Miami this year, but then you lose to Cal, and Clemson plays like their C- game, and you lose at home to them. It's just super inconsistent. That's the next step for him to be an elite coach. I think he'll stay at Louisville. I think he's a great fit there, but like, you got to fix this, man. You got to get consistent. So that's kind of the talk on Louisville, Clemson, Duke in between them. Duke's 5-5 because they've lost 3 non-conference games. They got dominated by Virginia. Virginia had been skating by all these close wins, close win at at home against a mediocre Florida State. A lot of situations like that. They lost to NC State, but it was a non-conference game. All this kind of lucky breaks for Virginia. This time Virginia went out and dominated. Coach Diaz of Duke said, very disappointing night. We were thoroughly outclassed by Virginia. Duke is now only 5-5. thank goodness they're not going to go play for the ACC championship with 3 non-conference losses, because they would have not been deserving of making the playoff and easily could have been jumped by like a James Madison. You'd see like a James Madison and UNLV or something, both in the playoff over ACC champion Duke. Glad that's out of the picture. So now let's move up a little bit. First, let's look at this though. Let me zoom in here so I can see it. All right. So these are the most unlucky teams in college football. And you see Boston College at number 3. They should have basically 2 more wins, maybe more than that. And that is a little bit of a commentary of you play a close game where you maybe have more yards, and things just don't go your way. Kind of happened to them against Michigan State in overtime, against Cal, against Georgia Tech this week. I don't think Boston College is that far from being, I don't know, maybe they're not that far from being mediocre. Maybe they're only like 2 years from being a bowl team, right? And I guess with the portal, that could be as soon as next year. But I kind of understand why they might not want to get rid of Bill O'Brien, right? 2.6 wins difference, largely attributed to luck. And Clemson, look, 1.6 wins difference because of bad luck. They're better than Duke. They play them a 3-game series, especially if it's a 3-game series at Clemson. They win 2. I don't know that they're better than SMU, but probably should have won that game. Georgia Tech, that game was up in the air late, and they hit a crazy field goal as time was ticking. And there was like weird fluky turnovers. I don't know. I think Clemson is not necessarily good, certainly not championship caliber, but Clemson's better and Boston College is better than what we've seen. So I think worth calling out, because we'll call it the flip side in a second. So above that, we have Cal, who was off this week. We have Pittsburgh, who Narduzzi said we could lose by 100 to Notre Dame, but as long as we win these last 2 games against Georgia Tech and Miami, and go play for the ACC championship and win it, like that's what this is all about. So, Notre Dame's not a must win. He's right. Notre Dame's not a must win. They also lost by 22 points. It was really worse than that because they fell behind early. Their offenses looked worse, as it seems like the league's maybe or the sport is a little bit caught up with Mason Heinschel, their quarterback, who's great, but burst onto the scene as a true freshman was like amazing, and now it's kind of equalized a bit. So they dropped to 6, and really these top 6 could be like totally mixed up. I would not be surprised if Pitt goes to Atlanta and beats Georgia Tech. Wake Forest, like they already beat SMU, who's ahead of them. SMU already beat Miami, who's behind them. So like you could totally invert these top 6. So that's kind of all in fairness. Miami was dominant. They were at home against NC State, blew them out 41-7. Carson Beck looked good again when he's good. This is a good team. 291 yards and 3 touchdowns for Carson Beck. Miami's got great offensive and defensive line play. So when Beck's good and they've got pretty close to dominance on the lines of scrimmage, they're good. It's not crazy for them. They need some breaks, but they're certainly the most scary team in a postseason game, whether it's the ACC championship or a playoff team, because they're so good in the trenches, and because they have a quarterback who at times is really good. They're definitely the most dangerous team in the ACC. I don't have them number 1 because they haven't earned it, but that's the team I'd be most scared of playing, because you can play well, but if they play their A game, you might just lose anyway. Now they need Georgia Tech to lose to Pitt because they play Pitt, so they can then jump both of them. Or at least move into a tiebreaker with Georgia Tech, who they don't play. So that would help them. They need SMU or Virginia to drop a game, preferably both. That would put them in some tiebreakers. I don't know how all those tiebreakers would go, but they need a lot of those things to go their way. So I still think there's a pretty decent shot they don't make the playoff or don't make the ACC championship game, but they're not out, and I think they're the most dangerous team. So I could have them 1. It's a debate. How much do you put resume? How much do you put who would I pick in a game tomorrow? These are power rankings, so I lean a little bit more to who would I pick in the game tomorrow, but not totally. And because it's not totally, I don't have Miami 1. I don't have Miami 2. And they just lost to SMU not too long ago, so I don't have them 3 either. I have SMU there. SMU was off, but SMU has a little bit of a tough finish. They'll host Louisville. Who knows who Louisville is? If Louisville plays like they did against Clemson, SMU will kill them. Then they go to Cal, and I kind of like Cal. I like their quarterback. I love Jacob DeJesus. They don't have probably a ton of pieces, but going on the road to Cal seems tough. We'll see when that game time is, but tough finish for several of these teams. Miami has to play Pitt. Pitt has to play Georgia Tech and Miami. SMU has to play Cal and Louisville. So tough finish for some of these teams. And then how did I decide the top two? And this was tough. This was tough because Georgia Tech won. They have the best record. So if you look here, what do you do here? So Georgia Tech, the luckiest team at more than two, so 2.2 wins above expected is that's a lot. That's a whole lot. So they've been fortunate. Below them, Virginia is 1.9 wins above expected. That's also a lot. So two of the luckier teams, and that's why I say, despite them being a clear 1-2 on what they've accomplished, should they are they that much better than Miami and Wake Forest and Pittsburgh? I don't think so. I think it's really a muddled mess, but this was a tough decision on who to go with first. People have criticized me for being very negative about Virginia all year, and I think I've been right about them. I think they have been lucky, and I think that's what the data says. But Georgia Tech has been luckier. So finally, after all of these weeks, I finally caved to the pressure, and I put Virginia number one because Virginia went out and had a dominant win against Duke, much more dominant than when Georgia Tech played them. Georgia Tech, another lucky win. Their defense, Georgia Tech's defense, has been horrible. Last two games, they allowed 583 yards to NC State. NC State's not that good. They allowed 537 yards to Boston College, and Boston College is definitely not good. That's 1,120 yards in 2 games with an open date to rest and heal up and prepare between them. Man, I thought their defense would be almost this bad at the start of the year. Turned out their defense was good until now. Now it's more like even worse than what I expected coming into the year. This goes back to the whole luck thing. If Clemson played Georgia Tech this weekend or next weekend and Georgia Tech's defense is this, maybe Clemson can beat them. But Clemson played them when Georgia Tech was awesome. And Georgia Tech made crazy field goals and Clemson made dumb turnovers. That's the luck element of the sport. And that's why Georgia Tech is more than 2 wins above win expected and Clemson's more than 2 wins below win expected. You just hope the year that you're unlucky, you're one of the most unlucky teams in college football, is a year where you're not going to win a championship anyway. And so that's what it is for Clemson. And look, you're Georgia Tech. You want your luck to strike on the year where you got a chance to go to the playoff. And if they can close out strong and beat Pittsburgh, then they just got to win one of the last to beat Pittsburgh. You're in the ACC championship game. Then you just got to pretty much beat either Georgia, and you'll probably be locked in as an at-large, or beat whether it's SMU or Miami or Wake Forest, whoever it is, or Virginia, probably Virginia, in the ACC championship. You're in the playoff. So Georgia Tech's got to win one of their next 2 to really have a fully successful season. But they struggled this week. Their defense has been really bad these last 3 weeks, or last 2 games. And so we'll see what's the real Georgia Tech defense, the one that has been horrible lately, but is what we expected all year, or the one all the way through October that looked pretty decent and surprisingly so. Really exciting finish for them. Virginia will have some exciting games, but mostly it's Virginia Tech in that closer. I think this Duke game was the big one for them. They beat Duke in dominant fashion. They didn't punch their ticket, but now I'm starting to believe they're going to be in that ACC championship. Their odds of winning the ACC, certainly their odds of being in the ACC championship, are higher than anyone. And it's not all luck anymore. They're very lucky, but not the luckiest. Virginia, you're number 1 in these ACC power rankings. Let me know what you think. Who am I too high on? Who have I done wrong? Always love to hear it in the comments. Thanks for watching and appreciate it. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and if you have the new option, hype this video. I really appreciate it. Let's hear a word from our sponsor, ReadyVets. Thank you to our sponsor, ReadyVets. If you live in the upstate and have a dog or cat that needs immediate care, ReadyVets is the place to go. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe.